and welcome back to the channel. And as you can see, we are not in our usual studio. I'm currently in Tokyo, Japan on vacation, yet here I am making this video. But yeah, I wanted to make this video on the OnePlus 11 and see how it's been holding up after a few months and after all the updates that it's gotten. Now, I actually haven't reviewed this on the channel yet, but I have had this phone since launch, and specs wise, it's pretty good. But camera, on the other hand, is... We'll get to that later in the video, but OnePlus pushed out a few updates over the course of the several months that I've had this phone that fix a ton of bugs that I've experienced over the past few months. So just like any other review on this channel, let's quickly talk about its specs. The OnePlus 11, this one that I'm reviewing, has 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, which is top tier. The processor inside is the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, so this thing is a champ when it comes to performance and battery efficiency. And speaking of battery, this also packs a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, so it's pretty much in line with a lot of other flagships that are a few $100s more, like the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, the Oppo Find X6 Pro, and sometimes even the Pixel 7 Pro. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about its battery and its performance, just because it's pretty much in line with other flagships with similar specs like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. However, the S23 Ultra, I think, has one of the best battery life on any smartphone with a similar 5,000 milliamp hour battery, but the OnePlus 11 can average around 6.5 hours of screen on time, but probably more if you stick with Full HD Plus, but this is pretty much in line, like I said, with other flagships that cost a lot more than the OnePlus 11. But do you know what doesn't cost a lot? Keeping your online identity safe. Trend Micro's Premium Security Suite is their flagship product, and it gives you complete device and identity protection for you and your family. Now, Maximum Protection protects your Mac and PCs 24/7, and Mobile Protection protects your iOS and Android devices. Now, Trend Micro can cover up to 10 devices, and you can get Wi-Fi protection that turns a public network via a virtual private network, and it encrypts your connection so you know that you're safe and sound. Since I've been traveling nonstop for the last few months, I need to make sure that my online data and my personal information is safe online. More often than not, I'd have to connect to a public Wi-Fi when I'm out and about just to send emails or messages, since the cell reception here in Japan can be a bit spotty and sometimes can slow down when there's too much traffic. The Premium Security Suite is super easy to download on all of your devices, and as soon as you log in, you're protected. ID monitoring provides dark web monitoring and blocks sketchy and malicious websites, and the Security Suite also includes a password manager so that you can log into your accounts quicker and safer. And probably the best part is the 24/7 help desk if you need help for all things technical. If you want to feel safe online, make sure to download Trend Micro's Premium Security Suite using the link down below and use my code HeyMarkL10 to get 10% off. Again, huge shout out to Trend Micro for sponsoring a portion of this video. Now, when it comes to performance, like I said earlier, it's using the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and it is a beast. From the power to its battery, playing games and doing everyday things like social media scrolling and watching videos is still a pretty fluid experience. It's a super fast phone that will be fast for the next 3 to 4 years, and whether you're a power user or not, the performance from the 8 Gen 2 is really impressive. The battery, like I said earlier, is pretty on par with other flagships. You'll get around 6.5 to 7 hours of screen on time, which is definitely more than enough for everyday consumers, and with the 80-watt charging, it can fully charge the phone back up to 100% under 35 minutes, which is a lot more impressive than the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Now, battery life is obviously super subjective, so take my testing with a grain of salt. You can probably push this phone a little bit more in terms of its screen on time, or it could be a lot worse. It just really depends on how you use your phone. In terms of its screen, it has a 6.7-inch QHD Plus AMOLED display that features LTPO, so it can dip down to 1 Hz if needed and go as high as 120 Hz. The screen, in my opinion, looks great. It's not a complete flat display, but it's definitely less curved than older flagships from OnePlus. Now, it doesn't get nearly as bright as other flagships that I've reviewed recently, but in all honesty, in a day-to-day use case, indoors, you're not really going to be able to tell that this only has a peak brightness of 1300 nits, which is still plenty bright for everyday consumers. Now, when it comes to software, it's running Oxygen OS, which, to be frank, is just Color OS from Oppo, just renamed to Oxygen OS for OnePlus. Now, I've been reviewing Oppo phones for the last couple of months, and all those phones are running ColorOS, and it's the exact same experience as OxygenOS here on the OnePlus 11. Now, it's not as bad of a UI or software experience that everyone claims it to be, and what I actually like about OxygenOS compared to ColorOS, though, is that there's no alternate app store, there's no other voice assistant or duplicated apps pre-installed, but since I'm in the US, Google Services is king, and all that was pre-installed on this phone are Google Apps and a few other OnePlus native apps like, the weather app, notes, and the calculator. But the stock calendar app is the Google Calendar app, the stock messages app is the messages app from Google, and it's a very light and true Android experience out of the box. Now, when it comes to software updates, OnePlus promised users 4 years of major OS updates and 5 years of security updates with, of course, occasional bug fixes and software and camera improvements. So the last couple of updates that I've gotten, my Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connection feels more stable, whereas before I'd use Bluetooth headphones like the Nothing Ear 2 or AirPods Pro with the OnePlus 11, and it would just either disconnect or just cut in and out if I'm listening to music. It's just a very unstable connection, and the same goes for the Wi-Fi. It would sometimes kick me out of my own Wi-Fi at home and use my cell service instead, and I'd have to toggle the Wi-Fi off and on for it to connect back to my network properly. So far, after the updates, I haven't had any issues, and overall, it's been pretty stable. Now, there's also been a couple of camera improvements regarding that 2x zoom lens and video recording, so let's talk cameras. Cameras, in my opinion, is what really makes smartphones different nowadays. It used to be the display or processor or the software, but I really think what smartphone companies nowadays are focusing on, excuse the pun, are the cameras. So the OnePlus 11 packs a triple camera setup on the back, a 50 megapixel main wide camera, a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 32 megapixel 2x zoom camera. Now, OnePlus unfortunately didn't opt in to put a 1-inch sensor for its main wide camera, but instead used the IMX890 sensor, which is still a fairly large sensor, but obviously not as big as the 989 with that 1-inch sensor. Now, if you're a fan of using the main wide camera, the IMX890, in my opinion, takes incredible looking photos. Out of the camera, shots are crisp, not too over processed, but it's still contrasty and has good color accuracy. I also like that there's a good subject to background separation without the need to use portrait mode thanks to that bigger sensor. Now, the ultra wide and 2x zoom lens, in my opinion, is just okay. I think I've just gotten spoiled with other flagships with far better sensors than the ones that OnePlus use on this phone. Like the Find X6 Pro from Oppo uses the same IMX890 sensor as the main camera on this phone, but for the ultra wide and telephoto lens. So my opinion on those two focal lengths might be a bit harsh just because I've seen better photos from other phones, but the shots that you can capture with the OnePlus 11 are fine. But just know that there are phones that take better ultra wides and telephoto shots, in my opinion. Now, as for the camera updates, the 2x zoom lens apparently got better in terms of autofocus performance, and the processing is also a little bit better now too. In my opinion, I haven't really noticed anything drastic on the telephoto side of things. I never really had issues focusing with the telephoto lens, but the overall photo before and after the update, I can't really tell if there's a difference in how it's being processed. Most of the shots that I got were pretty solid from the start, so if you weren't really getting good shots with the 2x zoom lens, then be on the lookout for this update. Now, in terms of video performance, I think the videos out of the OnePlus 11 looks okay. I still think the S23 Ultra is the king of video on Android. The OnePlus 11 can shoot good videos, but there's something about its processing that I just don't love. It's a little bit too sharp for my liking, but overall though, it's fine for most things like sharing videos on social. But yeah, that's the OnePlus 11 after the updates. It's a pretty awesome phone for $700 or $800 in my case with this review unit. I think OxygenOS and how minimal and clean the UI is looks great and pairs really well with the hardware on this phone. Now, the 80-watt wired charging is great, although not having wireless charging on this phone is kind of a bummer since the OnePlus 10 Pro from last year had it, and a super fast one at that. Now, the telephoto and ultra-wide cameras are just meh, in my opinion. It's not something I'd rave about on social or to my friends. The main camera, the IMX890, is great and can take incredible looking photos, but I just wish OnePlus swapped out that 2x zoom lens for a 3x or 5x periscope zoom lens to get a completely different focal length. Because I can always crop in on that 50 megapixel main wide camera and get a similar looking shot as the 2x zoom lens, and it might even look better since the sensor is bigger and the lens itself has a lower aperture at f1.8. But then again, that's just me and how I feel about the cameras on this phone. I've used a ton of smartphones over the last few months, and some have incredible cameras for all three focal lengths. The OnePlus 11 at $700 might be a bit too steep for a lot of people, but if cameras are not a priority to you, but you want, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 and that massive 5,000 milliamp hour battery with the 80-watt charging, then this is probably the most affordable phone that you can get if you're looking for that performance and battery efficiency. Now, of course, you can also buy older phones in the used market, ones with the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 processor, but the 8 Gen 2, it just hits different with its performance and battery efficiency. Anyways, that's been it for this video. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we are trying to get to 50K subscribers, and with your help, I think we can get there a lot quicker. Thank you all so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you all in the next one.